What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the new collaborative EP from Panda Eyes and Nasko, released on Disciple Records. Let's fly. Here we have the combined creative minds of Oskar Steinbeck, Panda Eyes and Antonio Ahrens, Nasko. Two young, predominantly dubstep producers hailing from different parts of Europe. The former more well known than the latter, having been around for a little longer and released a fair bit more. Nevertheless, considering their respective approaches to making dubstep, this one didn't seem too much of a surprise. Especially when you take into account Nasko's feature on the remix package for Panda Eyes' last EP, Isolation, which represented Ahrens' first bit of full exposure in the dubstep world, following a relatively low-key last few years in the BROSTEP scene, collaborating with the likes of Code Pandorum, Extra Terra, Detrace, yet never quite launching himself into the dubstep mainstream. That being said, to my knowledge, he is only 18, and perhaps this string of collaborations alongside Steinbeck is the much-needed push to see his pedigree rise significantly. Something to note on Panda Eyes since the Isolation EP was his rather harrowing drug addiction reveal around a month ago, explaining his troubles with rehab and ruined relationships, withdrawal during shows, the huge breakdowns he's experienced. And when you take his recently discovered autoimmune disease into account too, it just seems like misery after misery has been compounded upon him in the last couple of years, in spite of his signing to Disciple. Leaving me surprised initially to hear of this EP's release, considering what he's gone through. However, the more I think about it, the more it's happening makes sense. Maybe he needed someone alongside him to help him get back on the productive bandwagon, and what better way to do that than with a short, collaborative EP? Which is exactly what Let's Fly is, a brief, colourful burst of hyper-brostep music that fundamentally sounds like these two having a load of musical fun together. I wanted to say having a load of fun together outright, but that sounded slightly suggestive. And that's not quite what this channel is about. With these three tracks, you have the repetition of a pretty straightforward structure, with each of the cuts going about that in different ways. Enticing intro, second drop wildly different from the first, midsection, brief outro. This format permeates the EP from beginning to end, meaning there's a pleasant, non-fuss A to B kind of feel about it, running with something and sticking with it, a quiet confidence lying beneath the creation. The track that I feel executes this most effectively is the middle one, Sucker. The intro here is a cagey one, and interesting in the sense that it alludes to it either being a trap or riddim track to follow, leaving us unknowing as to what direction it will take next, feeling not too dissimilar to the intro of Virtual Riot's Chop Chop. It opens up with this supernatural, oozy sequence. The percussion in the build is absolutely fantastic. Before the first drop, properly bombastic brostep, taking your attention in many directions, both high and low. I love the grungy, jumpy bits here, a very nice positing of individual sounds, cleverly done. Then we get the EP's only double drop, a blistering start with sounds flying everywhere, similarly jumpy, but a bit screechier this time. And it's moments like these that I think stop me from seeing these tracks as great, and more just pretty good, as it's slightly ill-fitting. The midsection starts as a toning down of the track's outlandishness, before providing a necessary moment of reflection at the EP's midway point. And then we get the second drop, which is probably my favourite on the EP. A trap breakdown with some more very astute positioning of sounds, getting better over time too as more is added in. Everything rebounding off each other, but it's so well cut, finishing with an alien-like zip-zap outro in owing to the track's first build. So there you have the template, the enticing intro, second drop different from the first, midsection and brief outro, evident also in the other two tracks. And I've said that Sucker is the best execution of said structure in my eyes, but really there's not a huge distinction from the other two quality-wise. The opener and title track sets the tone well, succeeding a storytelling jack-in-the-box kind of intro with a pulsating trance-like progression. The stunning thing I feel about this track is the way in which it so drastically changes mood on two occasions. You have the first build, the brooding electro synths rising from underneath, love the threatening vibe of them, again the percussion is great here. And then later on to kick off the second build with those huge stuttered wavy wubs, bringing the darkness back in following a delicate midsection. The breaks in this second build, I must say, are also expertly done. Unsurprisingly, the track's other sinister moments are provided in the drops, which in all honesty are the parts putting it down the pecking order of this EP. The first is just blurts of sound, not offering too much, some decent twisty moments, but mostly quite bland. The progression here, however, is pretty euphoric and vibrant, once again channeling Virtual Riot, but more akin to stuff from his throwback EP. In keeping with the EP's structure, the second drop is different, amping up the first drop's best parts, but that isn't saying much. The energy is good, but it seems more misguided than anything. And to close, we have Gold Grills, the intro to which is my undoubted favourite of the three. Drifting in outer space to begin, the muffled vocal sample and synths emerging, the powerful key change, it's a beautiful collection of ideas. Not to mention that chugging bass in the progression, brought back in after the first drop, completely invigorating, so good. The builds generally in this tune are on point. The first is very triumphant with these horns and underlying vibration. Once again, quite Virtual Riot inspired with those thrilling notes, a leaf taken straight out of the Pray for Riddim book. The second build is just as hyped, but again it's the drops here that I feel let this track down. The screeches in the first drop, undercut with those high-pitched jabs, are overwhelming in themselves, but simultaneously not enough space is filled here. The progression is more alive with a couple ambitious developments, but it ends up returning to the original drop again. Drop number 2 here is certainly more attractive though, with its skittish design and better dynamic, even though these screeches remain in parts. And true to the EP's theme, it culminates with a short-lived outro, this one fading into the distance, flailing in the abyss. So, taking everything I've said into account, I wouldn't say I love any of the tracks here from beginning to end, but there are moments from all three that I am growing to love. Beyond what I've mentioned already, I'm yet to touch on the midsection in the opener, Let's Fly. Ethereal and magical, like something from the Shire in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, before the track kicks back into action, making you feel like you're soaring high above the ground below. Or the rising wubs before the drops in Sucker, the intricate percussion in the shimmering midsection of Gold Grills. So it's more a flashes of brilliance EP than one professing a succession of wall-to-wall belters. Ever so slightly rudimentary feel to these tracks, yet certainly more coherent than thrown together in their delivery, as the repeated structure suggests. But I think the rudimentary aspect of it can be interpreted in a different way, as perhaps spontaneous or off the cuff. And through this interpretation, I see this EP more as a joyous, uninhibited project, something that they must have had a lot of fun putting together. The drop ideas can be seen as mostly weak, but through a different lens they're eccentric, wacky, and just a crazy listen, like a super hyper coffee-fueled kid bouncing off the walls. And considering this is, to my knowledge, the first times they've collaborated, when taking ideas and feeling into account, I think they can be very pleased with the overall result. Especially, as mentioned, when you think about what Steinbeck has gone through, what it must have taken for him to get his side of this thing done. So yeah, whilst Let's Fly isn't special, it's a solid reflection of where they're both at currently at this point in their careers. Panda Eyes doing well but not quite his best as he gets back on track, and Nasko showing his signs of improvement with each release. And you wouldn't expect much more than that really, meaning that in many ways with Let's Fly, you get what you came for. I just hope for Steinbeck that he's in a good position going forward. He tweeted some signs of improvement the other day, and long may that continue. And as for Ahrens, well, does this project hint at him potentially signing to Disciple soon? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. Now, in terms of my favourite from Let's Fly, I think I would have to go with Sucker. Doesn't have the most moments going for it, but overall this is the most together of the three for me, especially in its heaviest parts comparatively. And in terms of recommendations, if you enjoyed this EP, then I think I would have to go with Virtual Riot, who I've mentioned a few times already in this review, and also Redux. And so that is that for another review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of the new collaborative EP between Panda Eyes and Nasko, released on Disciple Records. Let's Fly. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Let's Fly. What did you guys make of it? Do you have a favourite track from the three? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting the notification bell along the way. For some other dubstep reviews on the channel, check out the link next to my head somewhere. Don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across social media, all of which is linked, including the recommendations, in the description box down below. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure as always to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see all of you legends in the next one. Peace out.